It's an unbelievable moment to be the entrepreneur. And it really is for three reasons. First of all, we have a huge increase in the available market for our products and services. Literally this decade, we're going to go from like 1.8 billion people that are in the middle class out of the 7 billion to over 3 billion. We're going to increase the effective market for our products and services by almost 80%. And so I've always maintained if you can't make a lot of money, not that that's the only reason you start a business, but if you can't make a lot of money this decade, it's because you've messed up, because the marketplace is there. I think the second reason is obviously the internet, and it allows you to pull resources from all over the world, right here to Barcelona, and allows you to do business any place in the world. And as an entrepreneur, you can compete with the largest companies because the internet's been the great kind of leveler out there in the marketplace. And then I think third, people are just open. They've got now the resources. It's cool now to be an entrepreneur. Literally when I started the Young Entrepreneurs Organization 30 years ago, 25 years ago is our anniversary, it was not cool to be an entrepreneur. I mean, parents' attitude were, you know, when are you going to get a real job? But with Steve Jobs, I think the original young entrepreneur that proved a 20-year-old could build a $2 billion company, I think it's been cool since. So the market's there, the tools are there, and I think the mentality that it's okay to be and actually cool to be an entrepreneur is there. So it's a great time. You know, so I wrote this book called The Greatest Business Decisions of All Time, and we looked at 18 unbelievable decisions that leaders made that not only changed their company, but their industry, and in many cases, the entire nation. But the three that I think of the 18 that are most applicable to the Catalan entrepreneurs, I think first and foremost was the Apple decision. And that was to bring Steve Jobs back, but what's the lesson there is when Steve was gone in what's called the wilderness years, he learned a critical lesson about the importance of radical focus. He was building Toy Story, and he saw how neat it was to have his entire team and every ounce of their resources laser focused on just one project, which was Toy Story. So when he got back to Apple, and if you remember, they were in handhelds and printers and scanners and laptops and desktops. They had already spread themselves fairly thin. He came back and said, look, we're going to do just 2 desktops, 2 laptops, and then he divided the company into 4 teams so that each team absolutely only had one project that they needed to get right over the next 2 years. And then he continued that pattern. You know, they took 2 years to introduce then the iPod, they took another 2 years then to do the iPhone, and then it was another couple of years that they did the iPad. And so our message to the entrepreneur is to radically focus on a single priority. Don't get distracted by 4, 5, or 75 in the marketplace. That's number one. I think the second lesson comes from Samsung. And here's a company out of South Korea, you know, 7th largest in the world today, probably the main company given Apple a run for its money, where they were very, first of all, in love with their own language. I mean, it was all about learning Korean. And in 1990, the head of Samsung said, look, we have to be a global player. And so he sent 400 young people out into the world in different parts of the planet to learn the languages, learn the cultures. And my favorite story is they sent a young Korean to Russia. And he had to come back and he wrote up an 80-page report. And not once did he mention business. It was 80 pages of the drinking habits of Russians. But he went on to become the head of Samsung in Russia, and then obviously helped them become #1 in their various product categories. So the lesson is, you can't just sit here in Barcelona, you can't just sit here in Catalonia comfortable with your own language and think you're going to be successful in this global world. The Chinese are invading every part of the planet, so if we don't get into their markets, they're going to be in our markets. And we're going to all have to kind of take a Samsung mentality to our businesses, much like Softonic has done here as a local Barcelona company. And then I think the third lesson comes from Walmart. And Walmart here is the largest company in revenue. yet started. It was a decision that Sam Walton made in his very first retail store in Bentonville, Arkansas. And that was to gather his employees together every Saturday morning and say, what did we learn this week from customers? What did you see as employees? What did we see competitors do? And so early on, he realized that he alone wasn't smart enough, that he needed to tap into the ideas of his entire team and his customers and his competitors. And his goal was to make his store 1% better every week. And if you can make whatever you do 1% better every week, compound interest is your friend. So, radical focus, you've got to get global, at least in your thinking, and get outside your own language. And then number 3, it's all about tapping the ideas of others in order to grow the business. Well, I think obviously the Catalan champion here is XVIII. You know, here's a company 3 years ago when I first started working with them that, you know, it was a great company, mainly focused on the Spanish market, providing software that you can download safely. And today they're in 10 languages. They've become #1 in the world. They have beat even the US competitor Download.com. And I think it's 3 things. First, they have an unbelievable team. Tomas, the founder, Emilio, the executive team, and they've really done a great job winning now 5 years in a row, best place to work. It's not even just the senior leadership team. They have got an unbelievable number of outstanding employees throughout the entire organization, so it's about team. I think number 2, obviously they have thought global, moving outside of Spain and the Spanish language and getting into these various other countries and languages around the world, just like Samsung. And then number 3, they're unbelievably disciplined. From their meeting rhythm to keeping track of their key performance indicators. They are great students of business and have been very coachable in what it takes to be a global powerhouse. And so they are, I think, a great example of a Catalan company. Well, first of all, I think it's probably the greatest city on the planet from which to do business. One of the reasons I'm here, and for this reason. First of all, culturally, it's very much like San Francisco and Silicon Valley. It's a very open culture, hardworking, and let's get very basic. It's got great weather. You've got the water, you've got the mountains, you have the lifestyle that seems to attract the creative talent that you need in order to power a business. Second, and I think we need to sell this more, it's absolutely in the right geographical position to do global business. We, 3 years ago in our company, said we want to have 50% of our revenue outside the United States. And though we came here for the lifestyle, I've discovered that this is the right time zone because most of the growth is happening slightly east of here, in India, in the Middle East, in China. And I can comfortably do global business here versus the United States. In the morning, I'm on with India 3.5 time zones away, China's only 6 time zones away, even Australia is convenient. I can then have that long Spanish lunch that I love and allows you to stay connected to community. And then the West comes on, you know, in the afternoon and early evening. And so in a normal business day, I can comfortably cover the globe, and I never have to fly over the Pacific Ocean. If you look at the globe just from a land and water perspective, we're again perfectly right in the middle of where all the action is. Now, the challenges, we need more direct flights. That's just a simple basic that would make it easier to do business. And there's this challenge with the language. The growth companies that we work with that are global really need to have a workforce that first and foremost knows English well, because that's the language of business that is one. And so I think if the region can tackle those 2 things plus, and I know Christopher Palmer-Enning's doing a great job as a venture capitalist here, but we need more financial capital available to support these growth funds. Most of them find they have to end up going to Silicon Valley, like Linkwood did, and raise their $3.7 million, because this just hasn't been available up until recently in this region. So Flights, language, and capital could be used, but you've got the lifestyle and the geographical location and the creative culture, and so those are the pluses and the minuses. I would say emulate FC Barcelona. I mean, you've got the greatest, football team here on the planet, arguably the greatest player ever, and they really, I think, share 4 lessons. I think number 1, it is about team. You and I were talking about Messi and would he be the greatest player alone? But clearly it's the power of having an unbelievable team. Just like Softonic has a great team, this entrepreneur, you cannot do it alone. And your 3 or 4 most important first decisions are who are going to be your teammates. I think number 2, you have to move fast. And that's been always the brilliance of the FC Barcelona, is that they're not sitting on the ball, but constantly moving it. And number 3, they're well coached. And the fact that no one's ever achieved peak performance without a coach. And the fact that Softonic has engaged a coach to help them, and no doubt the coach plays an important role within the team. And then, most importantly, you have to continue to stay on the offensive. In fact, they've actually done some research in football, and that when in the middle of a match, if a team who maybe is leading starts to play defense instead of remain on the offense, they almost always lose the match. And one of the things you see with FC Barcelona is they stay on the offense till the 90th minute plus whatever extra minutes they have to play to finish up the match. So it's the power of the team. You've got to move fast, make sure that you stay on the offensive, and get a great coach, because no one has ever achieved peak performance without that.